1982, they produced convincing evidence of Soviet bases in Nicaragua.
I used to laugh and say, look at that Soviet-style baseball diamond over there, you know. This is almost foolish, really, to talk about this. First of all, they're not Soviet military bases. That's the whole point. The second is that a barracks is a barracks. An obstacle course is an obstacle course.
How about this for a story? Just under a year ago, the Americans discovered a Soviet freighter carrying MiG fighter planes, which they said were on their way to Nicaragua. Here's the story on the front of the Times. Moscow warned on Nicaraguan MiGs, and there's a picture of a MiG-21. According to President Reagan, this showed that Nicaragua was a threat to the United States.
As it turned out, this was the evidence for this was based on satellite photography, which showed crates at an East European port facility, which were determined to be, in the science of cratology, the crates of the sort in which MiG aircraft frequently were shipped. And subsequent photographs a day or two later showed that these crates were no longer on the dock. And an amazing leap of logic, it was advanced that necessarily they must have been delivered to Nicaragua, or were on their way to be delivered to Nicaragua. Well, it's the usual thing. The charge makes the headlines, the retraction makes the inside pages. 8 or 10 days later, it's revealed, well, MiGs weren't on the way, but that's no longer a headline. So what one is left with is the overall impression from the screaming headlines of the week earlier that Nicaragua continues to represent this enormous danger to the security of the United States. This nation of 3 million impoverished souls, half of whom are under the age of 15,
Well, I would say people are very silly if they believe everything that newspapers tell them, and I think probably anybody who buys a newspaper needs a course on how to read newspapers.
Part of my reason for coming out of the CIA is that it was a tragedy, a travesty of U.S. principles of freedom and democracy, that you would have the United States setting up a tradition of supporting dictatorships, brutal ones, forming and training their brutal police and death squads, while the Soviet Union, which has had periods of pretty harsh policies towards its own people, is winding up the champion of real freedom throughout the world. If you have a dictator and you want some help getting rid of him, you cannot go to the United States, you can go to the Soviet Union.